Happy second Sunday in 2026. The year's coming. It's here, and we're stepping into it together. And we're beginning our New Year series titled Inviting People to Follow Jesus. All right, let's say this together. Inviting people to follow Jesus. You know, and I'm going to have to admit that I can't take full credit for this series, for what we'll be going through the next few Sundays. Now, I have to give credit to our men's discipleship group that I meet with every Monday night. You know, we were getting together a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about our individual spiritual resolutions for the new year. And we're each sharing, and I'm sort of writing them down and taking note of that. And I said my spiritual resolution for the new year was to have a greater love for my neighbors, so that I would have more opportunities to invite them to community and invite them to Jesus. Well, I finished sharing that, and then Brian challenged me, pushed back a little bit. He said, "Scott, what about your role as pastor? How does that play in all this?" Well, I said, "Brian, okay, well, here's the deal. If I'm going to expect you all to invite people to Jesus, then I have to lead by example." That's what I learned in the military, to lead by example. And if I'm going to expect you to invite people to Jesus, then I need to be doing it too. They said, came back and pushed back again. So, but Scott, as pastor, you know, should you only be setting the example by inviting others into community? Or is your role as pastor to create a culture whereby we're all thinking, we're all living our lives in such a way that we're looking for opportunities, all of us together, to invite people to community, to invite Jesus. So we finished our meeting. It was a great meeting, and I typed up all our resolutions. And then my resolution is just as to create an inviting church culture. To create an inviting church culture. Where inviting people to following Jesus is the norm rather than the exception. To create a compelling church culture, where looking for opportunities to talk to people about Jesus is our first thought rather than a missed opportunity. To create a loving church environment, where we invite people to Jesus and to community because our love for them, because of Jesus' love for us. To rise up and truly become the Temple Baptist Church, TBC, a.k.a. the best community. To invite people who are seeking community, who are lonely, who are disconnected, who are troubled. These are very challenging times, troubled times. There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of concern and a lot of fear. A lot of fear. A place where they can come and feel welcome and accepted and loved. So, you can blame our men's group for the direction we'll be I'm not taking this, blame them for the direction we're going to be taking and who we're going to become this next year. And we come to our passage today, and we find that Jesus was looking for people to invite. All right, let's say that together. Jesus was looking for people to invite. And here we go. Here we go. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. Jesus was getting ready to ignite a movement. In fact, if you look at this passage of Scripture, the title of it, Calling His First Disciples. But instead of strategizing about this movement, instead of developing an intensive marketing plan to how to promote his movement, instead of building a prototype or running multiple iterations on his laptop computer to find a way that would make his movement most viable, Jesus simply goes walking beside the Sea of Galilee, looking for people to invite to join his movement. And he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. Now, based on what we know about Andrew and Peter, and especially Peter as we go down the road and find out later, I cannot think of two more unlikely people I would invite to become part of my movement, much less any other movement. Financial assets, maybe a fishing boat, minimal at best. Emotionally, Peter was impulsive and hot-headed. He would always speak before he thought. Educationally, minimal at best. Skill set, they could cast nets and fry fish, clean fish. Peter and Andrew were simply not the stuff world-changing movements were made of. But Jesus does not care about our finances or our emotional makeup or our skill set or our educational level, because Jesus is not limited by our weaknesses or our strengths. Jesus simply looks for people who might be open to accepting his invitation. When Jesus needs someone to be humble, he goes out in humility. He finds a person who's willing to be humble. When Jesus needs a person of passion, he goes out and looks for that person who's willing to allow the Spirit to really move in their lives. When Jesus needs people to follow him, he looks for a church, a community who's willing to say, we will be that church, we will be that people, and allow him to shape them into an inviting machine. You see, the reality is that Jesus does not need what we can do. He just needs us. Say this together. Jesus does not need what we can do. He just needs us. Jesus needs us to let him do in us what only he can do. Jesus needs us to be available to the change that he wants to work in our hearts. And it can be a challenging, hard, lifelong, painful sometimes process. And he saw two brothers called Peter. Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. And they were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. What? Simon, Peter, and Andrew, they were getting ready to have an encounter with Jesus, and there was no revival meeting taking place. They were getting ready to have an encounter with Jesus, and there were no hour-long prayer meetings happening in the area. They weren't even in the synagogue. They were out doing what fishermen do. They were casting nets in their boat into the lake. Why? Because that's just what they did. You know, so often we feel that we can only encounter Jesus. Spiritual stuff can only happen in church. That we can only sense his presence as we gather together as a people of God and sing songs together to God and pray prayers together to God and read from the Word here in the space to God. We think that only then and there that we can have the opportunity and possibility to encounter Jesus, the Son of God. It's as if we limit Jesus and his ability to impact us to Sunday mornings alone. But spiritual stuff can happen to us as much outside of the church as it does inside of the church. Jesus can touch our hearts and lives and step into our reality 6 days of the week, not just one day of the week on church on Sunday morning. I remember for me, when I was back at West Point, I was a member of the Baptist Student Union. That was a gathering of Baptist students. We would gather together and we would worship. And on Sunday morning, we would meet in Thayer Auditorium. And Reverend Alton Harp would deliver the message. He's passed, long past now. And his wife, ferry would fix us snacks that we would eat after the service was done. And just a great time, and I was blessed by it. But the times that were most impactful for me were those nights I would put on my running shoes. Now, I'd run up to a place in the woods above the cadet chapel. And I'd wait there for God to show up. You see, when the pressure became more than I could handle, I would go there, and there's a little space, a little opening in the woods, just a beautiful little area. And there was one bench. It's almost as if it was made for me. And a pond. And when the pressure became too great and it was more than I could handle, and I didn't know if I could make it, I would put on my shoe and I would run up there. And I would sit there on that bench. And I would gain strength there. And I would gain courage there. Because in that space on those nights, I would meet Jesus there. Then I could run back down to my room and do what I needed to do and continue to progress and one day graduate. And that day, Jesus was looking for people to invite. And he had a simple invitation. Jesus' invitation was to follow him. Let's say this together. Jesus' invitation was to follow him. Watch what he says. Come, follow me, Jesus said. Not come die for me. Not come learn from me. Not even come believe in me. Just simply consider the possibility of following me. You know, when there's this concept of following, there's a couple things that are involved with that. There's always a person who is leading and someone else who is following. And so there's a dynamic of individuals happening in that space of following, but there's also the reality that the person who's leading is taking the person who's following someplace, taking them into a direction. Maybe a different location, maybe a different way of thinking, maybe a different place where they're at spiritually. And for Jesus, it was to take them to a different way of life. And thirdly, I think most importantly, the aspect of following, it can happen voluntarily, where a person voluntarily chooses of their own free will to follow someone else, or they are made to follow someone else, as in the military, where you have your orders and you have to do them whether you want to do them or not. And as we read the Bible, we find that many, many people were drawn to Jesus, but only a few hundred, as best we can tell, decided to truly follow Jesus and become his disciple. See, Jesus' invitation was not to convert to a new philosophy or even a new religion called Christianity. Jesus' invitation was simply to follow him and be discipled under him. And the people in Jesus' day made a lot of excuses. One person said, I just bought a field and I have to go take care of it. Another person Jesus invited said, well, I just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I've got to go test them out. Another person said, I'd like to follow you, Jesus, but man, I just got married and I've got to stay home. Just all kinds of excuses for not wanting to follow Jesus and be discipled by Jesus. In our day and age, we have people that have so many excuses that they make. Jesus, man, I'd love to follow you, but I've got a career to begin. Jesus, I would follow you, but I've got a children to rear. Jesus, I would follow you, but I have too many games on my cell phone that I have to play. Jesus, I would follow you, but I've got too many apps that are calling for my attention. Jesus, I would follow you, but I've got a life to live. Jesus, I would follow you, but, I'll let you fill in the blanks. And that's what many of us do. We delay, we seesaw back and forth, making excuses, weighing the pros and cons of following Jesus. It's like a new year, going on a diet or getting in shape or becoming more organized or raking the leaves or organizing our homes. We'll get to it, we'll procrastinate, we'll do it later, and later it rarely comes. And to our excuses, Jesus simply says, let the dead bury their dead. I'm offering you a way of life. But if you choose to walk away, then you will end up realizing a life that is less than you could have lived. And the amazing thing about Jesus, he did not sales pitch. He did not twist anyone's arm. He did not put pressure on him. He just simply said, come, follow me. And then he'd keep on walking. And if the person balked or said no, he let them go on their way. Can you imagine anyone saying no to Jesus' invitation? Jesus is all about inviting. And just like Jesus did 2,000 years ago, he's looking for people to invite to follow him today. Now, this is not Decision Sunday, but this Sunday is a day of decisions. And I'm just going to ask you if you'd bow your heads and close your eyes just for a few moments. I just want us to, in our space where you sit, where each of you are. This is a Sunday when a moment you can decide to accept Jesus' invitation to begin following him. You can make a decision to stop living life for yourself and living life by living for Jesus. A Sunday we can decide to walk away from the past you have lived to the future that Jesus has for you. A Sunday unlike any other Sunday, when you can make a decision right now that will forever impact the course of your life in this world and in the next. Jesus just walks along. His Spirit moves throughout. Come follow me. Come follow me. Come follow me. Come follow me. And then he keeps on walking. Will you today decide to follow Jesus? To be discipled by Jesus? To be changed by Jesus? And as you're following Jesus, to invite others to follow you following Jesus? Invite them to lead the lives that they've been living to a better life, the way of Jesus. Invite them into your life. Invite them to the life that only Jesus can give. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus.